Dr. Rashmi Sarkar, and all dear delegates. I, Dr. Surbhi Sinha, am convener of the IADVL Leadership Pipeline Committee, a prime presidential project of our current IADVL president, Dr. Rashmi Sarkar. On behalf of the IADVL EC and the Leadership Pipeline Committee 2022, I welcome you all to this lecture, the second in the series of lectures by the stalwarts, which will be held to commemorate the Golden Jubilee of IADVL this year. These lectures, we hope, shall help you and benefit you in both your professional and personal lives. These lectures, as well as the live interactions, which will be extremely beneficial to all of you. Today, we have with us Dr. Michele Verschooeer. She's Medical Director, L'Oreal Research, Innovation and Technology, and is a dermatologist at the Hospital Saint Louis, Paris, France. Dr. Michele is a globally renowned dermatologist with a special interest in pigmentary disorders and skin of color. She's been a very active member of our Indian WDS WhatsApp group. In fact, she's been very encouraging in all our endeavors, always giving her very valuable inputs. She's also an invited plenary speaker in the Pigmentary Con that was held recently in hybrid mode in Mumbai, where she spoke on pigmentation. Today, she will be speaking on the evolving role of public-private partnership in dermatology. We shall have her recorded lecture and then a half-an-hour live Q&A session with her. Let me remind you, there is a time gap. It is Saturday evening for her. So please remain muted and ask relevant questions. If you feel there is a repetition, do not ask that question again. I now request Dr. Rashmi ma'am, our current IADVL president, to please speak a few lines about our distinguished speaker. Ma'am.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Surabhi. And welcome, everyone. Welcome, Dr. Michele Verschooeer, who's a very renowned dermatologist, especially in pigmentary disorders, hair disorders. And she's also a very good friend. And of course, all of you who are awardees of the IADVL Leadership Pipeline Program, the first of its kinds, as well as from the IADVL Guru Dharma Mentorship Program. I'm very happy to say that this is a very important residential project which we had done in order to build future-ready leadership. Yes, somebody asked me that what is the meaning of future-ready leadership yesterday. And I said it means that, yes, we are going after 50 years into something completely different. We are living in very turbulent times, and the leadership that is required now is very different. I think you agree with that. Yeah. Leadership does not always mean that you're always leading an association. It means leadership in what you are doing, your work. And for that, it's important to be a team player also. I'm very happy that your leadership pipeline program with the global coach, Mr. Nikit Karajki, is going to start from 7th of May. I'm sure all of you have got the roster, and each of these sessions are very important. My request to all of you is please do not miss them, right? You may be doing this, you may be doing that. Please postpone those things because you will not get this again. The 5 programs, whereas you can always travel, right? You can always do those other family things, postpone them by 2 hours, 3 hours. When there's a will, there's a way. You can have it all, but please make time for it. Okay, so those 2 hours are very invaluable. Please do not miss too many programs. Certificate will only be given to those who attend all, and at least 4 out of the 5. If it is more than that, we may have to rethink about the certificates, please. So do not mind. We have with you today a very invaluable lecture. As you will go up in your practice or in your academic career, you'll realize that what is the value of the public-private, partnership. Does the pharma industry actually play a very role? They play a very important role, yes, but you have to utilize them well. You have to know what to do. And they also give you inputs. Of course, Dr. Michele herself is a dermatologist. That makes a difference. And I think the key lies in what exactly you're doing. Are you able to give something back to them just as you give something to them is also very important. It's not just about taking. It's a two-way system. Regarding Dr. Michele, what I'd like to say is, She's somebody I met, when she had emailed me way back, probably in 2008, when Dermacon Chandigarh was happening, when she said she's coming for a lecture and would we meet and talk about empowering, women's leadership in India, right? If you remember, Michelle.
Yes.
So it was a very, difficult time because there wasn't time. So we just managed just about to take a car, rush and drink a coffee in Sector 14 campus in Chandigarh. I think it was a Chinese restaurant, but we just managed to have coffee in a Chinese restaurant. And there we talked about, she did talk about, that in fact, she asked me that who are the important women leaders in India. I didn't have an answer. Honestly speaking, I could identify one or two, but those were people I really didn't know. Just by name, I could mention three or four. We started that, we were in touch off and on, but yes, it got consolidated somewhere around 2010 or 11, when we did think that we are working towards a common goal. And that is when I said that we worked across time differences, different time zones, right? Sometimes we would meet across a conference. It could be maybe at a breakfast meet, you don't find time. It could also be while you're walking from one place to another. Or but big ideas can be discussed, let me tell you, even in 20 minutes, even in 30 minutes, if you know what it is. Some of the best deals are done that way. Main ideas, we've been in touch, we've done a lot of collaborative work together. When Michelle has been also, they have brought about the IADVL L'Oreal research grants, the hair and the pigment grants, they were a very big, very important part in the research in IADVL. Some of you may have got those awards. In fact, I managed to get them at the fag end, just when they were finishing. But I'm happy to say that I managed to get two of them and I published my works. So I think they did kickstart this idea of having, some grant for research in India. So, and they've been supporting the Indian Women's Derm Association in a big way. So, and then also the Indian Women's Derm L'Oreal Combined Leadership Project we have. So we have been forerunners. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being a researcher, an academician, right to the core. Most importantly, for being a friend with the right, intentions, trying to goad, other people to go ahead in their career. Over to you now.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
it was
you.
Ginza Restaurant, Sector 14. Somebody's written.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Surabhi. Thank you, dear Rashmi, for your wonderful, kind words. Yes, I think that traveling around in the different countries where dermatology communities are organized a bit differently puts a light on what could help empowering people in science of skin in the different countries. And yes, I found very early that in India, it was necessary to share the dermatology and the science of skin between men and women in a fair way, but also to share the decision positions. Being the one making the decision for the profession is essential. And if you devote too much time to clinic and to teaching, then you don't have time to make publications. And we know that publications, scientific publications, are exactly what makes you getting an academic position and a position of power and influence. And it's not to get the power for power, it's just to get the power in order to design, to shape the professional societies in a way which is fair for everyone. And this is what has been fantastically achieved in India in the last years, thanks to Professor Sarkar and thanks to all the team around Professor Sarkar. And I am very amazed and impressed by the dynamism of the Indian Women Dermatologic Association. But I want to tell that I'm not for a fight between men and women. I'm for access in a fair manner to everyone, men and women, because I think that diversity within the same professional association is very useful to push the boundaries and to, at the end, be more helpful for patients and give access to the maximum of people in your country. So congratulations to all of you for all what you have been doing and what you're doing today. And I feel very honored and privileged to give this lecture today on partnerships between industry and the academic sector in dermatology. Why? Because the dermatologists are not product. The dermatologists are there to participate to the scientific and medical adventure and to be part of the innovations. And by building fair partnerships between academics, dermatologists, and industry, then you can also have a very fair reward, all of you, regarding these advances. And in particular, with the digital revolution, we see that digital revolution is based on technologies and based on a know-how which is not dermatology. But these private company, digital companies, need the know-how of dermatologists, the private dermatologists, the academic dermatologists, in order to build all the softwares and all the AI-based tools in a fair manner. And again, it is what fairness, which is my main goal in life. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to give you a few thoughts about that and about this problem, and also some examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. I now request Nishant to please play the recorded video, after which we will have the interaction.
Sure, playing now.
Indian dermatology, and dear Indian, it's a privilege for me to give you the role of academic dermatology industry. Historically, the interface between industry and dermatology was rather rare because of the two different worlds, and it was mainly under different types of interfaces. The interface can be private sponsorships of universities, of Department of Dermatology, through donations of the industry, of private partners. This didn't allow any feedback from university, it was just donations. Another way of partnerships is a transfer of technologies, because industry has done a tremendous progress in identifying new technologies and developing know-how. And then it was very important to industry to share these new technologies to academics and to universities. A third way of having an interface between industry and dermatology is to develop basic science research projects. And this can be done either on skin diseases to understand and decipher the origin of some dermatological diseases, or to understand better hair and skin physiology. More recently, industry was also called up to be trainers, to be teaching in medical schools, and to be part of university diplomas, because of the high increase of knowledge developed in science by private industries. And it could be also that industry is sponsoring thesis, postdoctorate thesis, and also give some sponsorships for interns or grants for medical doctors. In addition to that, the industry also can participate to public health programs and sponsoring some patient education programs. Regarding what pharma industry is interested in, which is developing new drugs and new bioinstrumental techniques and methods, it is a mainstay that the development of these tools and these drugs require to have partnerships with academic and with medical schools in order to test those new drugs and new techniques on patients. which are only seen by universities and medical schools. And more recently, thanks to the development of digital tools, it was very important to develop some tools for diagnosis from far, called telediagnosis or telemedicine. And because the main developments and inventors relies in the private sector, those new technologies in digital health are mainly owned by private groups. Then the link with university and with academic is key in order to bring the medical expertise to these telehealth companies. So you can see that there are many different interfaces where the private industry and where the dermatology, academic dermatology can cooperate. So this leads to why do we build these public-private partnerships? Mainly because there are, and this is even more today than it was in the past, there is a shortage of public funds for basic science research, and there is a need of fundraising. And also because, as we just said before, the mechanistical research on disease requires studies on patients, whether academic or clinics. And then the industry, in order to develop active principle innovations, requires to test on patients and then develop interfaces with academic and clinic. The share of knowledge of technologies is a mainstay, and more today, because the science is more and more specific, and it is important to share this knowledge in order to be synergic. And as we said, the digital revolution has brought a major increase in these interfaces between academic research and digital companies. But what we can see and know is that there are industry and universities are in two different worlds, in, if I may say, different cultures. Because in the industry, it is mainly business oriented. So the speed, the fast with which you develop your new techniques is one main point for industry. And the research of industry is obviously product oriented, but profit oriented. Each research must bring profit, otherwise it is dropped. And on the other side, for industry, it is important to have basic science and then therefore to have partnerships with academic, because basic science is key for product differentiation. On the other side, the culture of university is different, because in university, there is a very limited culture of business, and also industry is perceived as being a predator. And then there is building confidence is a key point for building partnerships between universities and industry. Research in university is knowledge oriented, and it is a long-term perspective. So you can see that both worlds are quite different. So what protects those partnerships? And the regulatory aspect is very important, and these are some examples of the different types of agreement between university and industry. It can be a contract research. The ownership of the industrial property is owned by the industry, and in return of a payment to the university. So this is a contract research, and this was the main step before. Today, it's more a sponsored research where the ownership belongs to the university, and the university has an exclusive paying license out to the industry. So you see here, it's more a synergic way of cooperation. And more, it is a pure collaborative research. The ownership of the property is within the industry, and the industry will pay financial compensation to the university. I can tell that in France, more and more public organizations tend to propose co-ownership of industrial property generated by those partnerships, because then it's more balanced and then both parts feel secure. I just give you a few examples of the differences between industry and university research, how the research is organized. In industry, the legal status is very well defined, whereas in universities, there are many different entities in the same unit. The signature in the industry is also very well defined, whereas in the university, it can be multiple. Regarding the owner of the invention, in the industry, it's a very well-controlled process with policies, whereas in the university, there is an ample freedom left with all scientists. In the industry, the inventors are few, and only the true inventors are described, and they are employees of the industry, whereas in the university, there are plenty. It can be employees, it can be trainees, students, visiting scientists. For publication of this research, the university has very few publications, and the publication is over-controlled by the industry, whereas in the university, publishing is a mainstay. If you don't publish, you don't exist. And this way of saying publish or perish means that it's only by publication that the scientists in the university will have a wide recognition.
Can you please mute, please, Dr. Shukla?
Regarding the reports
please
of the
mute
science,
for everybody, Nishant.
Sure, ma'am.
We can continue, please.
In the industry, there are certified lab textbooks with periodical reports and invention disclosures, whereas in universities, the lab textbooks are generally not certified, and the results are mainly presented through PowerPoint presentation instead of final reports. And regarding confidentiality, obviously, confidentiality is a must in the industry, whereas in the new university is much less stringent, even if it has changed a lot recently. So I will give you some examples of partnerships between industry and academics in different parts of the world. First one is in an example in the United States, where there was a preventive initiative in psoriatic disease, because you know that psoriasis is a long-term disease, chronic disease, and there is a whole spectrum of symptoms on the skin and on the joints. But given the long-standing disease, it's difficult to predict what will be the symptoms of the degradation, rheumatologic degradation of psoriasis. So it was necessary to have a longitudinal study involving several departments in the US of rheumatology, dermatology, involving a private institute of biomedical research to identify the biomarkers, and this institute based in Ireland, the National Institute of Health from America, which is a state organization, a SAGE BioNetwork, which is a private institute for recollecting all the data, and the National Psoriasis Foundation. In this joint venture, the objective was to study the prevalence with a longitudinal follow-up and having the early symptoms of psoriasis, the biomarkers of the skin psoriasis and the rheumatologic psoriasis. And all these data were analyzed in order to build the scientific basis of future campaigns of prevention of the Rheumatologic Extension Authority. It was very successful, and the outcome was the identification of gaps in diagnosis and treatment, and the identification of specific biological markers in order to prevent the rheumatological extension in psoriasis. Another example I give you in France, and this was done by my team, myself, and the major cancer institute in France, which is a major one in Europe, because we observed that the new molecules, the targeting drugs of cancer treatment, not only for skin, but for any types of cancer, induced some specific skin side effects. And for example, keratoacanthomas, hand-foot syndrome, folliculitis, hair loss, nail malfunctions, changes also of the skin color, and edema and hemorrhage under the nails. So we did a long-term follow-up for many years, for more than 6 years, for each patient receiving these new molecules, and in order to identify all the skin side effects and prevent them with a given strategy after that, the observation. So this long-term study allowed us to really understand the nail toxicities prevalence by this systemic anti-cancer treatment, and also to identify the quality of life impairment induced by those treatments, and also the modification of the body image. All these aspects were published. And because of these observations, and because L'Oréal is a company involved in defining beauty strategies and preventing these beauty alterations, we were able to publish a guide for all women entering cancer treatment. And you have a photo of this guide on the right-hand side. And in this guide, we give advices in order to take care of hair, for hair coloration, take care of nail to prevent the nail dysfunctions and nail abnormalities, to moisturize the skin, and to have the best adapted hygiene measures. And this is thanks to this very long-term cooperation between this medical department in this cancer center and our knowledge at L'Oréal of what are the beauty routines we can recommend for women undergoing cancer treatments. Another example I would like to give you is one example in Africa, in Ivory Coast. As you may know, that in Africa there are many misconceptions about what is black skin and what is acne on black skin, for example, because most patients don't come when they have acne lesions, they come after, when they have post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation with minimal acne, and then you know that this PIH is very difficult to treat. So then we interviewed many young students from 10 to 14 years old in order to check what was their understanding of acne. And we identified that there is a very, very slow knowledge of what are the physiological characteristics of dark skin and black skin, and also the risk of post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. So we established some discussions with some stakeholders in Ivory Coast, the National Education Ministry, the Health and Public Hygiene Ministry, and the Scholar Life Directorate. And we proposed to them to build some primary prevention program in schools, which could belong to the teaching of biology to students from 10 to 14 years old. And including besides those African stakeholders, we had also some associations, some NGOs, and also the Foundation of Academy of Medicine. And all stakeholders agreed to build this prevention program. And this prevention program was based on 3 pillars. One is I understand my skin, so to give all the physiological data to the students in order to allow them to understand how their skin will react to sun exposure and to acne, to mechanical trauma, etc. To first understand. Second, self-observation. How is my skin today? And then some had acne, some had pigmented spots, etc. And third, I respect my skin because I know exactly what is good for my skin and I know exactly what has been damaging and can be damaging for my skin. And these few numbers, when we started in 2 institutions, in one private and one public college, and with a referent dermatologist from the National Association of Dermatology of Ivory Coast. And then we trained the trainers. So 10 instructors were trained in these 2 schools. And then more than 2,000 students were trained in this short period. What is very important for this primary prevention program is after the campaign, when we interviewed the students, we could check that 89% of the students have assimilated the key messages on acne and skin hygiene. So the outcome of this pilot campaign is really outstanding because, in fact, 89% of students have assimilated the key messages on skin hygiene and the danger of depigmenting products sold on the market. And there is also a concerted awareness of the student networks, the parents and the teachers, to help the student to maintain a natural, normal, healthy skin. So, and we have also developed with them some digital tools in order to help disseminating those advice of skin hygiene and respect of the skin. Now I'm going to speak about another example, which is an example in involving many different countries in the world. And it is also a partnership between L'Oréal, but between different universities and mainly University of Genetics and Anthropology in Geneva in Switzerland. And it was about knowing the different types of hair curvature, of hair buckles. And we know that we are very different according to the regions of the globe about the hair style and hair curvatures. And this shape variability was never studied worldwide. And thanks to this partnership with those anthropologists and geneticists of these universities, we could identify different types of shapes worldwide. And this is the main result of this very, very large study, which involved more than 50,000 people. And we could have a hair classification which can really reflect what is the hair curvature. And for example, if we see here the stage 1 and 2, this is mainly in Europe and Asia. But if we speak about the curvature and the shapes, very curly shapes, like stage 2, 3, going till the grade 8, this is particularly specific of Latin America and Africa. So what this classification allowed is, instead of saying we have either stiff hair or undulated hair or frizzy hair, we can see that there is a wide diversity of frizziness. And this for us is very important in order to observe each one in his or her diversity. And this close collaboration between anthropologists and our labs was very successful, and this led to several publications. I would like also to finish with another example in Botswana, where there was a partnership between University of Pennsylvania and the Botswana countries. And because in Botswana, there are very limited access to healthcare. And also because the network, the bandwidth of the network is very slow. and it's very difficult to have some digital communication. But at the same time, there is a growth in mobile telecommunication industry, and more and more people in Botswana own a mobile device. So it was a good idea from Botswana country. Some companies, private companies specialized in IT, and also University of Pennsylvania to establish a memorandum of understanding, including the Botswana government, in order to develop access of health to early diagnosis in dermatology, radiology, cervical cancer detection, and oral medicine, thanks to the use of mobile telephones device and access to specialists in order to make the specific diagnosis. So we see that telemedicine is today one of the major examples of private-public partnerships. In China, we have also some funding for promotion of hair and skin research. And I give you these examples of one in China and one also in India, where during many, many years, a private company has sponsored numerous projects in hair and skin research. In China, it was over 140 projects, and in India, it was over 50 research projects. Similarly, in Africa, also we developed some partnership with national and regional association of dermatology, academic dermatologists, to create research partnerships with research grant program, which is funded by the L'Oréal Group. And we had several prizes, 2 to 3 every year. And I give you some examples of the winning projects here in the different years. And this allows the country in Africa to develop their own research, make their own publications, thanks to partnerships with the private industry. So in summary, the private and public research partnership is really a necessary alliance today because of the limitation of basic research domains to domains where only industry has a business interest. And we need to not only research in what is interesting in business-wise, but also knowledge in general of hair, skin diseases. And also because there is less involvement in dermatology prevention research by public authorities, because the prevention research implies the public funds are more for political reasons. Wish to have programs.
Surajit, yours is open, please.
Research, which is going to give some outcome very fast. And research and teaching of the science in physiology is done by private researchers. And we have seen examples where this research is also a very good scientific background for education campaigns, which are going to be realized, conducted by public institutions. And finally, the digital revolution in medicine is driven by private startups, by digital companies and private funds, but the academics must be involved for fair and ethical digital health programs. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I think that this area is going to increase a lot, specifically thanks to the digital revolution and digital tools we need to support the competencies, the expertise of medical doctors. I thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the Congress.
So I think, thank you very much, Michelle, for that very nice and very elaborate lecture on what exactly is, private-public partnership, which is an important an area. It's a gray area. We need to know it in the right perspective. So we are now open to questions, without much time and all that. So please put up your hands up and we'll take them one by one. I first see the hands up of Vignesh Narayan. He's from Chandigarh. Yeah, Vignesh.
Good evening, ma'am. First of all, a wonderful lecture. We learned a lot. And I just had a few questions. This was about public and private partnership as an institution or as an organization. What about like a partnership as an individual per se? Would it be, is it different if I wanted to receive partnership from a company as an individual, or is the process different? And I had another question. Suppose that whatever research is generated through these partnerships, is it available to public, and can other companies also use whatever research is generated from this in their own products?
Yes, very interesting question. Thank you, Vignesh. Yes, as an individual, you can sign a contract, an agreement with a company, but if there is an invention, you have to get advice from a lawyer because to protect your invention. So this is very important that before you sign anything, that you see what is a counterpart for you. So this is first. And second, as I mentioned during the talk, more and more partnerships today are co-partnerships, co-ownerships, because there is a need from both parts. So the agreements must be balanced between the two. Usually the company is getting the tools and the business, and the academics getting the patient and the skin expertise. So usually it's co-partnerships.
Thank you.
Next is, I think, Dr. Sanjay Kanodia. Sanjay, do you want to ask something?
Yeah, good evening, Dr. Michelle. It was a wonderful lecture regarding this. My question might not be so much relevant in the present status, but might be after 10 years from now, this might be a burning issue. That as artificial intelligence is taking a lot of place in different fields, and especially in medical sciences and dermatology. So many public and private players are trying to take it up in place of our organic intelligence or human mind intelligence. So how do you see it in our perspective, that is it a friend or a foe? And how we can make it more better for the future perspective of the society regarding this artificial intelligence?
Yeah, excellent question. And this is one of the threats, because usually when you develop a digital tool, the engineers are totally obsessed and focused on the tool itself, on the platforms, the algorithms, the AI behind, etc. So I think that, but those platforms can work only if they are fed by the expertise of, for example, of dermatology. If you want to get a tool to detect melanomas with AI, whatever, or anything. So I think as a group of dermatologists, you have to look very, very carefully what these private companies are doing, because there could be a kind of approved by IDVL or something like that, because you have to really interfere and to understand very well what has generated the algorithms, because you can build an algorithm with 10 cases. But this is not reality, because, for example, for the diagnosis of melanoma, you need thousands of cases to develop the algorithms. And if you check with the company who wants to sell to you the software and the tool of early detection of melanoma, and then you see that this has been done with very few cases, then it means that it won't be very helpful. So I think as dermatologists and as a profession very well organized in a professional association, before buying a tool, whatever it is, you have to check how this tool was developed and check the relevance.
That's a wonderful of the thing. Just one more thing on this platform, with IADVL itself being one of the very much prominent of this. Can we make some of limitations by different world forums and different of the societies, so that we can have a check and a line of difference where we can reduce the interference of this AI regarding our future perspective of the dermatologists.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Because thanks to the social media, you can very easily share point of views. And it's good that the profession is very well organized, not only nationally in India, but also internationally. And I think through groups of discussion on the digital means, on social media, you can share experiences. But I think that each time someone feels that the software is not adapted, you have to speak up to avoid. And I think the conditions where it may be very critical are for us in Europe, the early detection of melanomas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, because Sanjay, this thing is a fear that a lot of people have, but I think we have to accept that the only way, to go ahead is to accept change. Artificial intelligence is here and it's here to stay. So I think we have to just make ways and means, how to use it ethically, how to make it more standardized. It is going to be there. So if we just say that, okay, it's not going to be there, we cannot fight a system because it's also under technology. It's not just under doctors. So probably it will have to be made better and better. And that is where, these forums, global forums will come there. But I don't think it is going to replace a doctor, that is for sure. Because the personal touch is not there. But it can help in resource poor areas like Dr. Michelle was talking about melanoma and all that. I think that fear has to go out, This is something like even the quacks are there and everything. You cannot replace a very good doctor. More so nowadays when lesser and lesser people are taking up medicine now. So I think that's what we have to use it to our advantage. We'll move on further to the next because there are a lot of questions.
Definitely.
So I see Dr. Dipali Malvakar, I think you want to ask something. Very quick question.
Hi, good evening, ma'am. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful lecture, ma'am. I just had a question. I always find myself wondering, how do I navigate conflict of interest?
If you can introduce yourself, Dipali, just the place you are from, it will give Michelle a perspective.
Yes, I'm Dr. Dipali Malvankar. I am working in Mumbai. I work at the LTMMC Medical College as an assistant professor. So I just had a question about dealing with sort of or maneuvering the conflict of interest that always comes in when we deal with industry. I always find myself hesitating because I always wonder about how to navigate sort of the tightrope that is conflict of interest when dealing with them. Yeah, so I just wanted some.
Yeah, this is a very important question and a very difficult question too, because I think you can speak about a drug or whatever product for a company when you are deeply convinced yourself and not be pushed too hard. Because, for example, if you have participated to the clinical research of development of a drug, you know exactly all about it. And then you can say, I can speak or I can't speak about this drug. So I think it is your conviction which is important, because the more genuine you are and authentic you are in your communication, the best for the company too. And if you have any doubt about the usefulness of a drug or a cosmetic, don't hesitate, speak up, because it's important that I think the dermatologist owns a treasure. It is a treasure of their skin expertise. And this is very important for the company to be shared with the companies, because if you tell very highly and if you speak very early about your doubts, then you help the companies to go on the right way. So I think it's more back and forth if you find there is a doubt, and never speak for a company if you are not convinced. Of course.
Yeah, I think, it's important, this conflict of interest thing, but at the same time, if we did not even have the funding, sometimes some of the research wouldn't even get carried out. So that is also important because, of course, most of them do give positive results. But at the same time, if we don't even have, those publications, it would be very difficult for us to base, our treatment just on, our practice. So I think it is important even to have that. I think it's important to be convinced, as Dr. Michelle said, that would I really use the product, myself? Sometimes, even if you're not convinced, when you use it, you get to learn more about it, get more insight about it. That also happens. So perhaps people, who make a difference, thought leaders using it, properly, and how you use, work with the industry in an ethical way is also possible. It doesn't always mean that, you're working with a pharma, in some way to bring about a study or something has to be the something strange. Like, we can do it in an ethical way also, bring out, the paper also. Everything can be in place. I think it's just having the heart in the right place, and you should know, okay, I believe in this, and I don't believe in that. Okay, she has Dr. Michelle has about 5 minutes or so, so we have to be really quick. Dr. Sheetal Pujari. We
Thank
are
you,
there
ma'am.
anyway after this, for another 10 minutes. Sheetal.
I'm Dr. Sheetal Pujari. I head the Department of Dermatology at KJ Somaya Medical College in Mumbai. My question is somewhat an extension of what Deepali asked you, ma'am. Basically, when we also have, company-funded research projects, there is a basic reluctance on the ethics committee's part also, because this conflict of interest, like what Dr. Deepali mentioned, there is a general reluctance to pass those projects in the ethics committee. So, ma'am, can you give us some tips how to navigate this? How to negotiate this? Because I feel in India there is some amount of an anti-pharma campaign also going on in the media at the political level also. Perhaps that also plays a role in
Yeah.
the when the ethics committees, take up these research projects, when we have to take ethics committee permission. Can you give us some tips on hand how to handle this, ma'am?
Yes, of course. Ethical committees are mandatory for any new drug development. So any clinical research on new drug has to go through ethical committee approvals. But when you speak about new technologies or cosmetics, I find sometimes that some academics are excessive. And for example, for observational studies on cosmetics, you don't need an ethical committee. So you have to go back to common sense. If there is what defines the ethical committee approval for a cosmetic is when you need to have a biopsy, when you need to have the people coming every week for months, for example, and this is an activity which is not a normal activity. But if you just give the cosmetic and the people use that as it is an observational study, you don't need an ethical committee. So I think we have to go back to common sense and not apply the methodologies and the constraints of drug development to cosmetics if for the cosmetic study there is no biopsy, there is no recurrent examinations which can be modifying the way of life of the people entering the study. So this is where the line is. I don't know if I'm clear.
Yeah, actually, I'll just add to that, Sheetal. Some of this comes under the CDSCO, It doesn't
Yes.
directly come under DCGI. A lot of them can pass as cosmeceuticals. And that is a little easier, when it's not totally defined, as a drug.
Yes.
It comes
Yeah.
somewhere between a cosmetic and cosmeceutical. Having said that, I know what you're talking about. It is not very easy. But I think the only way out is that you have to just be very persistent. We had that very difficult time. Michelle knows. I had to get a couple of projects, passed. But it took time. Maybe it took about 9 months, something like that. It got done. So CDSCO is a little easier, because their permissions are easy than the DCJ, the Drug Controller General.
Yes.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there anybody else, because I think she'll have to leave. Any other question you have?
There is a hand of Dr. Dipali, but this was the same.
I think this is probably her hand was up before only.
Okay.
Yes. So my question to you, Michelle, before you leave is, how do you see, this public-private partnership now, evolving? You worked in India also, and we did have the IDVL L'Oreal project, but for some reason, of course, it didn't continue. Of course, we had some good interactions, but how do you see the future, of this? I've had a very good time, with doing it with a couple of the pharma industries. They've mainly helped us, in writing stuff and all. It's not been financially with a lot, but it's been with inputs and other things.
Yeah. No, I think that the future is very positive because the most interaction, the more between private industry and academics, the better for everyone, because we should not work in silos. And if you have no barriers between the two worlds, then at the end, the patients and the customers will be satisfied because the product they are going to receive has been developed and tested with a good agreement between the two parties, the two parts. So I think more and more partnerships are needed, and particularly in the way, that's why I quoted the examples of Africa, because prevention campaigns are really necessary. And I see many skin problems which are not so severe, which could be prevented. And for example, in India, is prevention of hyperpigmentation. And we know that for example, by a good photoprotection regimen, we can prevent quite a number of facial hyperpigmentation disorders. And this has to be totally evaluated, and the data has to be published in order to be sure that it corresponds to reality. That some, for example, sunscreen which are not effective in these conditions are not publicizing about their effectiveness, because the company has to show the effectiveness of its own products. And this is where the dermatologists who are requested to speak about those products must be very careful and just ask the results. I think the more you know about the drug, about the clinical results of this drug, and also the same for the cosmetics, the more confident you will be in proposing and supporting those products.
So I think we should thank Dr. Michelle, for being here. But the rest, please stay put. We still have 10 minutes to go in case we want to take up more questions. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Enjoy your evening, and thank you. And I'm very honored and privileged to be close to the fantastic.
We are also very honored that you were here. It was really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. So we are still here, and I see myself as Dr. Surabhi, Dr. Sunil Dogra is also there. Some of us, not many questions, but if you still have 2 or 3 questions more, we can take them. We will try to answer them to the best of our ability. I'm not very sure.
Adoni is also there.
Yes, Adoni is there also. So it's more about the public-private partnership. But yes, whatever we know, from our knowledge, we can share. So are there any more questions? Dr. Vignesh again has his hand up. So Vignesh, yes.
Yes, ma'am. In case that you do enter into a partnership with a private company and they are able to fund a part of the project, but you are in need of more funds, would you enter into a partnership with another company, or would it involve more legal issues?
See, this, Vignesh, would have to be defined by what kind of a memorandum of understanding or what kind of undertaking you've signed with them, because that will always be there when there is a funding. So if they tell you that we are going to be giving you an amount of money, right, grant, and rest of it, you can get it either from a government organization or you can get it from another source without defining the source, you're well within your rights. If not, ask them clearly that, I've got, let's say that I've got $1,000, I need $1,000 more. Can I ask another pharma or something like that, and they will clear it. Most of the time, they will be able to clear it. You don't need to do that. And you need to go only to the lawyer in case they have defined something and, you've kind of done that and still they say that, okay, you've done something wrong. That is when the legality, most of the undertakings or MOUs are already through the legal, retainers of the company. The pharma is very particular about going through the legal retainer before they give you any kind of an MOU. So look at the terms and conditions before. If you find in the beginning that it is not okay for you, you will not be able to subsidize yourself. In the beginning, you should spell out that, okay, I have X amount of, grant and I will not be able to finish that. Are you okay if I go to another, pharma, or can I take it from some other source and get it in written from them, right? Written on your email. That is very important. Most of the time, people who believe in research will not stand in the way of a person getting the grant. You have to acknowledge that I acknowledge A and I acknowledge B in your research. If that acknowledgement is given, it is all right, but please check out with your partnership first. Get it written, in the email, and then only, go over to the next person, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Rashi, you have a hand up.
Ma'am, I had a query. For example, if it is possible to do a certain research by the public sector itself and can be only marginally bettered by association with a private company. So is it better to have a public-private association in those cases? So basically, in other words, how much does this conflict of interest part pull a research down? Or how much does it have a downside to the research, the association?
See, most of us, some of us are in these, I think, public, centers and all. And I think in order to do some of the good research, sometimes if your institute or even the private setup where you work, even private hospitals have their terms and conditions. They're not easy. You should ask them if they allow. Definitely you can go in, for a partnership with the pharma industry, or should I say the private setup. But as I said, even to Vignesh, it's very important to look at the terms and conditions of their undertaking or the memorandum of understanding, which is there. Are you okay with that? Are you okay as an individual? Are you okay with the workplace where you are? Because the workplace should be okay also with that. You should not land in some trouble. Regarding conflict of interest, yes, when we are writing something and there are positive results, you could say that there is a certain amount of subtle conflict of interest. You can do nothing about that. But let us say that something is really good and it has shown a good result. Then we are not going to write, negative about that. It's another thing that you've done something and you find it's not working. Then it may be good to still present the negative result. The negative result does not necessarily mean, that it's an absolutely useless drug or something like that, but merely shows that we might have to do it under different conditions, probably a different dosage, and for a greater duration of time with follow-up. So those are the kind of things that you can write up. Some negative studies or studies which are neutral are also not very bad. So you should be truthful to yourself that you are going to present the data as it comes. So then there is no conflict of interest, even if the name, but if without this funding, this partnership, sometimes, good amount of research would not take place. You'll find that areas when there is little research, that is where this public-private partnership has not occurred. So in a way, yeah, it may look there is a conflict of interest, but we do need it also in our academia in some way. Of course, it is funded. So you may have to look at it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Or let us say that when I'm looking at that study, I will think of it, okay, it's funded by a company, so I'm taking out 20% for that. But even if I take out 20%, 80% remains. And we have our own experience too. So it is important in a way, and even that can be done ethically. Yes, you are working with them, you are presenting the result, but if it is negative, or let us say it is not that good, you can always say that this is so. But yes, you may need bigger studies that can prove it, or you may, the formulation can be different, the dosage may have to be increased. There are ways and means to do it. I think ethics are in place because we have to carry on, research anyway. If we don't do it, some other half-baked person will do it. I'm all for it that good people do it actually, rather than it going to a half-baked person. Yeah, I think Rohit Bansal has the hand up.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
It was a nice lecture, and it's really good learning and listening to everybody and learning from them. And I have one question. It's a practical thing. If basically, if we are engaging with some pharma company for some research, being a private practitioner, if they are paying something to us in return to that, are we liable to pay GST on that? I want to know about that, if it's clear to you.
That actually, people in private practice would be the best people to answer, and your accountant or your CA is somebody, who's really hot on this, because these days the person who's really doing well, COVID and post-COVID, are the chartered accountants. I think all of you agree to that it's the accountants who are in the best phases of their lives. While doctors are on the downside, but yes, not CS. So you should find out about that. I'm not GST. You'll have to find out, but TDS is definitely, deductible, which is the tax at source, So whatever they will give you, there is a deduction of TDS after a certain amount of money. There are, amounts, as far as I know, that for X amount, there is no TDS deductible. But the moment it is this much amount, then TDS has to be paid at the source. So it is showing that, you have taken a particular amount of grant. And then depending on that, asking the CA, GST has to be paid, then you pay that GST. I always feel that perhaps it is better to pay, more, even if it comes in refund. That is my take on the thing, talking from societies. Is Sunil around? Do you have a better take on this, Sunil?
Actually, ma'am, this is a very confusing point. They also don't know about this type of services. If we are doing something for company, they are paying in return that. They are also not.
We can find out, actually, Rohit, we can find out for you, because I do have a CA, working in two organizations.
In our group is aware of that. That's why I wanted to ask.
No, I will ask. Let me find out, because there are certain areas which are gray areas which actually nobody knows. Yeah. But I think when in doubt, one should ask one or two and then find out, what is the cumulative thing. And if something more has to be given, it's fine. I would rather give the little bit more than the less, rather to be safe. Because GST, as you know, is a bit of an issue and has to be given in time.
Yes, you're right, ma'am.
Unlike other things, even with penalties are heavy. So you people would actually know more than. Sunil, you're there. Can you please say something about this? We have often discussions on these things.
Yes. We can, I think, put this query to our practice management cell. I think they might be able to help us. They made out very nice newsletters. 2, 3. I think one of them.
Please write this down as a question, Rohit.
Yes.
And send it to me, and whatever, we will put it up and get an answer for you. I will also personally talk to my CAs. We have CAs for different things.
Sorry, also, ma'am, I want to make one point. Actually, this thing is not clear in our field. What services are payable under GST and how to get
some of it is there, Rohit. If you ask the practice management, they do have a list actually. I had asked Dr. Neeraj Pandey.
I have seen that list, but it's not true from GST people. It's it's from our IADVL cell, but not approved by GST. So we can do one thing. If we put our services and we put it in front of GST people, then we can get approval of that. And I think we can take initiative for that, that the services should be very clear that they are under GST or not under GST. Everybody is facing this type of problem.
So you can take that up, few of you can work on that, get it out, and then we'll see how we can help you.
Okay, ma'am.
So work on that. Maybe take up 3-4 people and work on that. Get back to us. We will see what we can do to help you. We do have a number of CAs. IIDVL has a CA, other things. We can always find out.
Yeah,
if necessary, we can try to ask a GST, person also. Officers, who are in GST, they may be able to help us. So
I have talked to my CA, and I have consulted to 3 more CAs. What they say, if you put from your side, these are the services that should not be under GST. Approve these things. So being ideal person, we can take initiative to approve these things. This is my personal request, not beside from this topic.
Yeah. So please, you don't do that. Maybe we can ask the practice management cell to help you. They have a huge cell, something like that. Just write a little draft and send me. We can work on that. Yeah, Sanjay, you want to Prerna, Sanjay, then Prerna.
It's just addition of. It's just the addition of the things which were there, which were talked by Dr. Vignesh and other of the participants, that all the things given by the company in terms of any monetary benefit, they should come under the guidance of NMC, that means Medical Council of India also. Those guidelines are being provided and we should work accordingly, because many a times one can be in trouble with these NMC people. The second thing, as Dr. Rohit asked about GST, just a simple part is one who is giving GST. Say there are doctors who are giving GST and there are doctors who are giving TDS. So those doctors who are giving GST, they are liable to pay GST on those procedures, and all the procedures, including any of the cosmetic procedure done by a dermatologist, are considered to be a cosmetic procedure. In Jaipur itself, we have found we have faced many cases where simple cautery was taken as GST. So one who is paying GST, either one who is not paying GST, they have to pay TDS, and one who is paying GST, they have to pay GST on all the cosmetic procedures. This is the additional part of knowledge I just wanted to convey.
But Dr. Sanjay, cautery is not a GST, it's not a cosmetic procedure. Now, if you are, that should be clear. That should be legally, we can do something.
Yeah, that's
Rohit, see, this here, what happens is this actually is not really in the purview today, but what you can do is we can take it up with the legal cell.
Definitely.
The legal cell is also doing a lot of work nowadays, if you notice.
Definitely.
So let us put this question, let us ask the legal cell to work. They're quite ready to work on these and get back to you. Many of them are in private practice, and we have people also who have done, law. So they'll be able to get back, and we can, it won't really be in this particular thing, but yes, we can take it up with them.
Yeah, definitely it was not a part of this very present.
But yeah, it's an important thing. Even if it is not a part, I understand that this is a burning question. So yes, we'll take up with the legal and practice management, let them get back to us with answers.
Definitely, ma'am. Definitely.
Yeah.
Dr. Sanjay, I want to know we are the honorarium we are taking from the company against research. That is liable under GST or not? I'm asking that.
Definitely, that is what I'm saying. If one is paying GST on any of your services, then it is under GST. You have to pay GST on that.
Fine,
you can take it back. Your CA will help you better. We have found many cases in Jaipur where such kind of things were there.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what I said. Actually, it's very difficult, but yes, the CA does help.
Yeah, definitely.
A stricter CA is sometimes better, I feel. Yeah, it's difficult. We find it difficult, but I'm sure you'll find that it's better to have a stricter CA in the current situation.
Definitely, ma'am. Always to pay on the better of the side to avoid.
Yeah, you can get it in refund. So many times we've got refunds. Which is there, at least from the society. Yeah, Prerna, you want to say something? That would be probably the last we will take up for the day. And we are always around, but for questions and answers. Yes, Prerna.
And my question is, as an individual, how do we choose a private organization or a pharma company for a research study? Is it like based on my topic, which I have in mind, I should choose a company who is having a molecule they sell for that topic and then approach them, or like which way to go?
I don't think you can really approach them that way, unless there are some people, who are bigger players, they can. Basically, companies only tell you that, we have N number of funding or scholarships and we can support them. Like, for example, L'Oreal had it for some time with India, IID Bill. So that way they were supporting, but they had proper, the paperwork was very perfect. And we were able to give a lot of scholarship to a lot of people. So that is how it is. As an individual in private practice, yes, if you want to do it, they basically want to do it rather than you. They will want their molecule, to run through certain trials. So they may ask you that, can you do it for us? So they will automatically come to you and ask you, or you can ask them also.
Ma'am, suppose I do it on the molecule of their brand. So then when I publish it, will I have to mention their brand name or only the molecule?
If they have supported you, right? Like besides using it, see, whenever you're using a molecule, obviously some brand you'll have to use. It could be A, B, and C brand. If you're doing it on your own, very often we do things on our own, If patient is buying and do it, they are not supporting, there's no need. You just mention the name of the drug. If they're supporting you, let us say that they're giving you the drugs, they're providing you some help, financially or even in kind for the patients. Even in kind, it can help. Maybe your paper work, statistical analysis. Then you have to mention that, some amount of, funding, some grant was given by the company. It could be a formal or a non-formal grant. In private practice, it is not so much of an issue. We have to be more clear when we are in the government service and all. Always better to acknowledge,
Thank you, ma'am.
So is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because is it okay for everybody? Because reason is these are gray areas and very difficult to really say what it is. The only thing is, when in doubt, I think one principle that we follow is when in doubt, do less than do more. That is there. Or, at least talk to 4 or 5 of your counterparts that can be there. Nowadays, you talk to your CA. Also, if you want, talk to the legal retainer. We do have a legal retainer also in IIT, although he doesn't do on each and every person, but we can take up a few questions with him. We will see if we can talk to a GST person and get him, from the practice management center, right? So we can tell them to organize one on GST, for you. So you can take up questions and answers with that. So will that be okay? So please send us the question and we will try to send it to the practice management and also the legal cell. We can do that for you and get some answers. They can work on it. So if that is okay, is everybody okay? So then, so do you want to close the session? Is Dinesh around? If he's not, then I think you will need to just tell them, Surabhi, about the next leadership pipeline sessions, which are going to be coming up. And, I think that's it. And anything else, that you need to add. And of course, the next lecture. The next lecture will be there, the guest next lecture. Please do not keep any family engagements. Please do not go to low network areas at that point of time. And keep your children, really make them not have too much of cold water and ice cream so they are fine, for that particular day. And that's all that I can advise. That's going to be on 21st of May, the next lecture. Guest lecture is on 21st of May. That is really going to be nice because the speaker is Dr. Seemal R. Desai. Dr. Desai, as you know, is the president-elect of the American Academy of Dermatologists. And he's really young to do that. So it will be a very nice interactive lecture for you. So keep your 21st, around 9 o'clock, free. You can note it down. And with that, I'll hand it over to Surabhi.
Thank you, ma'am. So, like ma'am has already mentioned, the next lecture by the stalwart is by Dr. Seemal Desai on the 21st of May. So that is one. The second is for the leadership applicants, the ones in the leadership pipeline program.
Yeah.
So the leadership pipeline program will start from the 7th of May, as I mentioned on the group. So it will be a weekly session with a leadership coach every Saturday, 3 to 5 p.m. And it will be for 5 weeks, and you'll be asked to do some homework as well. But it will be a very fulfilling experience. So do try and take out time, because if you miss out one session, then it's difficult for you to kind of catch on the next session. So try and keep yourself free on Saturday afternoons. And that's
don't miss too many, because if you do, it may be difficult to give the certificate, because the certificate itself means that you have attended all of them. It's a proper course which is there. It's not difficult to do, so it's quite enjoyable. So please keep yourself free. Dr. Surabhi has already given you the dates, right?
Thank you all for attending, and thank you for the lovely interaction that we've all had.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night, all.
Bye. Good night. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, ma'am. Bye.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good
ma'am.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.
Good night. Good night.